The moment he fired me, I smiled. Not because I was okay, but because I had just realized something. He had no idea who really owned the deal I was building. It all started with an email that appeared on my screen at 8:32 a.m. Effective immediately, your position at Xenix Systems has been terminated. My coffee cup froze midway to my lips. The words blurred, then sharpened again as I blinked. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Bill Carmichael, my boss for the past 2 years. Nothing personal, Avery, he said, his voice dripping with fake sympathy. Just restructuring. You were great support on the Variantech deal. We'll take it from here. Support? I had single-handedly built that deal from scratch. 60-hour weeks, countless red-eye flights, personal relationships with every Variantech executive. This wasn't just business. This was my masterpiece. And Bill hadn't lifted a finger except to show up at the final meetings to oversee things. I glanced at the thick contract binder on my desk, filled with pages and pages of legal language that Bill had never bothered to read. A strange calm washed over me as my fingers traced the edge of the folder. Thanks for the opportunity, I said quietly, and hung up. He has no idea what he just did. 2 weeks before the firing, I sat across from Marcus Chen, Variantech's chief legal officer, in their gleaming conference room. Rain tapped against the floor-to-ceiling windows as I slid the revised contract across the table. I've added something, I said, pointing to section 14.3. A stability clause. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Explain. If Xenix undergoes personnel restructuring before final agreement, I said, highlighting the text, the contract defaults to the primary negotiator's firm or representative. I held my breath. This was bold, maybe too bold. Meaning you? Marcus asked. No, I laughed, keeping my voice casual. It's just to protect Variantech from getting caught in any internal Xenix drama. The primary negotiator is technically Xenix itself. He studied me carefully. We both knew that wasn't quite true. On paper, I was listed as the primary negotiator. Not Xenix, not Bill. It was a technicality, but one with teeth. You expect issues? He asked. I shrugged, maintaining eye contact. In business, I've learned to prepare for everything. He nodded slowly, then pressed his pen to the paper, initialing the section. We trust you, Avery, he said. More than we trust your company, if I'm being honest. Little did I know how prophetic those words would become. It was personal. Dana from HR whispered over the phone the day after my firing. Bill went directly to the board last week, called you too ambitious, and developing conflicting relationships with our clients. My stomach twisted. I paced my apartment, phone pressed to my ear. He actually used the phrase becoming a threat to the leadership structure. Dana continued. He painted you as gunning for his job. I laughed bitterly. Bill's job had never interested me. I wanted to build things, not manage egos. But the irony wasn't lost on me. By positioning me as a threat, he'd created one. There's more, Dana said, her voice dropping lower. He told the board that Variantech was his relationship, that you were just handling paperwork. He's planning to take full credit at next week's shareholder meeting. My fingers tightened around the phone. 2 months of my life, countless hours of negotiation strategy, rewriting contract sections at 3 a.m., all to be claimed by a man who couldn't even name Variantech's CEO without checking his notes. Thanks, Dana, I said, my mind already racing ahead. I appreciate you telling me. I ended the call, my fingers twitching near my phone. It was time to make another call, one that would change everything. You were fired? Nate's voice crackled through my phone's speaker. That makes 0 sense. You're literally on the verge of closing their biggest deal ever. I'd known Nate Brooks since college. He'd gone from dorm room legal debates to becoming a sharp contract consultant with a reputation for finding creative solutions to corporate problems. Bill felt threatened, I explained, pouring myself a glass of wine. Classic fragile male ego. Forward me that contract, Nate said. I heard keyboard clicks in the background, especially that stability clause you mentioned. I sent the PDF and waited, nervously tapping my fingernails against the wine glass. 5 minutes later, he let out a low whistle. Avery, this is brilliant. Did you know what you were doing when you wrote this? I was protecting myself, I admitted. Just didn't know how soon I'd need it. If this clause is legally valid, and I think it is, you just became Xenix's biggest threat. Nate's voice had that tone I recognized from our study days. the one that meant he'd spotted a game-changing loophole. "Meet me tonight," he said. "My office, 9 o'clock. Bring everything related to this deal." For the first time since the firing, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could turn this around. Nate's downtown office smelled of coffee and leather as we spread documents across his conference table. Outside, the city lights twinkled like stars. "We need to move fast," he said, typing furiously on his laptop. "First, we create your consulting firm." "My what?" "AJ Consulting LLC, Nate explained. "Named after you. We file tonight, expedite the paperwork, and have you operational by morning." He slid a notepad toward me. "Write your business plan while I draft the articles of incorporation. One sentence. AJ Consulting specializes in high-value technology licensing negotiations." My hand trembled slightly as I wrote. This was happening so fast. "Is this legal?" Nate looked up, eyes serious. "Absolutely. Bill fired you. The contract specifically states what happens next. We're just following the legal path they created." By midnight, AJ Consulting existed on paper. By 2 a.m., we'd prepared a professional email to Variontech. Due to unexpected restructuring at Xenix Systems, as per Section 14.3, I will be completing the Variontech deal under AJ Consulting LLC. All existing terms remain unchanged. My finger hovered over the send button. Once I pressed it, there would be no going back. "Ready?" Nate asked. I took a deep breath and clicked. I stared at my inbox the next morning, stomach churning. Had I just destroyed my career? Would Variontech laugh at my attempt or worse, report me to Xenix? Then it happened. 40 minutes after sending, a new message appeared. From Marcus Chen, CLO, Variontech. Subject Variontech Agreement, Change of Representation. The notification sound seemed to echo in my quiet apartment as I clicked to open it. "Dear Miss James, thank you for your notice regarding the transition. After reviewing Section 14.3 and consulting internally, Variontech is comfortable proceeding with AJ Consulting as our contract partner. To be frank, we'd actually prefer it that way. Our executive team has developed significant trust in your handling of this negotiation, more so than with Xenix Systems itself. Please provide your new contact details and banking information for the final agreement. Best regards, Marcus Chen." I read it 3 times, my hands shaking. They preferred me over Xenix? I called Nate immediately. "They said yes," I practically shouted when he answered. "Of course they did," he replied calmly. "You're the one who built the relationship. Now, let's finish this deal." For the first time since the firing, I allowed myself to smile. The game was on. Bill Carmichael paced his corner office, phone pressed to his ear, face flushed with anger. "What do you mean you can't discuss the details with me? I'm the VP of Sales at Xenix. This is our deal." On the other end, Variontech's legal department remained politely firm. "I'm sorry, Mr. Carmichael, but we're proceeding with the primary negotiator as per Section 14.3 of the agreement. If you have questions about that clause, I suggest reviewing the contract." Bill slammed his hand on his desk. "I need to speak with Marcus Chen, now." "Mr. Chen is unavailable," came the cool reply. "Perhaps you should discuss this internally at Xenix." The call ended. Bill stared at his phone in disbelief, then frantically began searching through his emails. Where was the final contract draft? He'd never actually read it closely. That was Avery's job. He'd been too busy taking credit and planning how to announce the deal. He called his assistant in a panic. "Find me the Variontech contract, the final version, and get legal in here." As his assistant scurried away, Bill collapsed into his chair, loosening his tie. Something was very wrong. His phone buzzed with a text from the CEO. "Need update on Variontech. Board meeting tomorrow." Bill's mouth went dry. He had no update to give. Every email, every meeting note, every contract draft, I instructed, passing folders to Nate as we organized my home office. All of it gets cataloged and time-stamped. For 3 days straight, we compiled evidence of my role in the deal. Calendar invites showing I'd led every meeting. Email threads where Variontech executives asked specifically for my input. Draft contracts with my comment and edits. "Look at this," Nate said, pointing to an email from Bill dated 2 months ago. "Avery, handle the Variontech situation. Full authority to negotiate terms. I'm too busy with the board retreat." I remembered that day clearly. Bill dumping the potential deal on my desk like it was busy work, not realizing it could transform the company. "This is perfect," Nate said, adding it to our evidence folder. He explicitly delegated authority to you. We worked methodically, creating backup copies of everything. When we finally organized the last document, Nate leaned back in his chair with a satisfied smile. This isn't just a paper trail, Avery, he said. It's a trap. If Bill tries to fight this legally, he'll walk right into evidence that he abandoned the deal, then tried to hijack it. I nodded, feeling a strange mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. The trap was set. Chaos erupted at Zenix's headquarters. Through Dana, I heard whispers of emergency meetings and shouting from behind closed doors. The CEO cornered Bill this morning, she texted. Something about Variantech not returning calls. Bill looked like he was going to be sick. I imagined the scene. Bill stammering excuses, the CEO demanding answers about their supposedly guaranteed deal, confusion spreading through the executive floor. Meanwhile, I worked tirelessly from my apartment, finalizing details with Variantech's team. The licensing agreement, worth $140 million over 5 years, was nearly complete. Variantech's engineers were already integrating Zenix's software into their systems, following my technical guidance. That afternoon, Bill tried a different approach. Dana reported he'd gathered the sales team, desperately trying to piece together what I'd been working on. He's asking everyone about your contacts at Variantech. Your meeting notes, anything, she wrote. Nobody has what he needs. Of course they didn't. I'd always worked independently, maintaining my own records. It was my way of staying organized, and now, my salvation. The CEO's final words echoed through the office gossip channel. Fix this, or find a new job. Bill was running out of time, so was I, but in a much more positive way. The signing day arrived. I chose a boutique hotel's private meeting room, neutral territory, elegant but not flashy. I arrived early, arranging the contract copies with careful precision. My hands trembled slightly as I adjusted my newly purchased business suit, navy blue, conservative but confident. Today would define my career, one way or another. Marcus arrived with 2 Variantech executives. Handshakes, polite smiles. No photographers, we'd agreed to minimal publicity until the press release. Congratulations, Avery, Marcus said as we sat down. You've navigated a complex situation with remarkable professionalism. Thank you for your trust, I replied, hoping my voice sounded steadier than it felt. We reviewed the final terms, licensing structure, implementation timeline, payment schedules. Everything I'd built over those intense 2 months, now coming to fruition under my own company name. When it came time for signatures, Marcus pushed the contract toward me first. The honors are yours. I signed each copy, my pen gliding across the signature line. Avery James, CEO, AJ Consulting LLC. We shook hands again, this time with genuine warmth. It was done. The press embargo lifts at midnight, Marcus reminded me as they departed. I nodded, already imagining the headlines, and Bill's face when he saw them. I woke to my phone, buzzing frantically. Texts, emails, LinkedIn notifications, all exploding at once. It was 7:15 a.m., and the tech world had just received the news. The Tech Week headline said it all. AJ Consulting inks $140 million licensing deal with Variantech. My photo appeared below, taken from my LinkedIn profile. The article detailed the groundbreaking licensing agreement that would revolutionize enterprise software integration, exactly the language I'd crafted for the press release. Notifications continued to pour in. Former colleagues, industry contacts, even competitors. All suddenly very interested in Avery James and her mysterious consulting firm that had seemingly appeared overnight to sign one of the biggest deals of the year. A text from Dana made me laugh out loud. Bill just stormed into the office, threw a magazine across the room, and shouted, "Who the f*** is AJ Consulting? You broke him, Avery." I sipped my coffee, scrolling through the coverage. Variantech's stock had jumped 3% on the news. Analyst reports praised the strategic partnership. Everyone was talking about the future possibilities. Everyone except Zenix Systems. Their name appeared only in passing, a former employer in my bio. The company that should have been celebrating was instead scrambling to understand what had happened. Just as I'd planned. The cease and desist letter arrived by courier 3 days later. Zenix's legal department demanded I immediately terminate all fraudulent claims regarding the Variantech agreement and return all proprietary company information. I forwarded it to Nate, who called me within minutes, laughing. "They're panicking," he said. This letter is full of legal holes. They don't even specify what fraudulent claims you've supposedly made. He drafted a response that was a masterpiece of legal precision. As per Section 14.3 of the agreement, which was properly executed and acknowledged by all parties, the contract defaulted to the primary negotiator's firm following Zinix's decision to terminate said negotiator. Ms. James has acted in complete accordance with contractual terms that Zenix Systems approved. All proprietary information remains with Zenix, only the contract execution has transferred as legally stipulated. In simple terms, you fired her. She simply honored the contract you abandoned. We sent it that afternoon. The ball was back in their court. What happens now? I asked Nate. Now, he said, we wait for them to realize they can't win this fight. Bill's going to have to explain to the board why he never read the contract he was supposed to be managing. I smiled at the thought. Accountability could be brutal when it finally arrived. Zenix called an emergency board meeting. Through Dana's whispered updates, I pieced together what happened. The CEO, red-faced and furious, slammed a copy of the contract on the table as Bill cowered in his chair. You hid this clause, the CEO shouted, jabbing his finger at Section 14.3. You fired her without checking what it would mean for the deal. You screwed us out of $140 million. Board members murmured in disbelief. Someone asked if they could still salvage the agreement. The company's chief counsel shook his head. The contract is ironclad. Miss James constructed it perfectly. We approved every word, including the mechanism for transfer if she was removed from the project. All eyes turned to Bill. I didn't think she mattered, he stammered. She was just doing the paperwork. This was my relationship. The CEO's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. Clearly, Variantech disagrees. They signed with her in a heartbeat. The silence in the boardroom was deafening. Bill's career at Zenix was effectively over. He just didn't know it yet. Outside the company, my phone rang constantly with new opportunities. Word was spreading. Avery James wasn't just smart. She was someone who protected herself and played the long game. I need to tell you something, Nate said, his voice serious over dinner at a quiet restaurant a week after the deal closed. I looked up from my pasta, sensing something important coming. Before you called me about the firing, he continued, Zenix had actually reached out to me. My fork froze midway to my mouth. What? They wanted me to quietly audit your contract work, specifically the Variantech deal. He couldn't meet my eyes. Bill commissioned it. He was looking for mistakes, anything to minimize your contribution. The revelation hit me like a punch to the stomach. Nate, my trusted friend, had been hired to undermine me. But when I reviewed your work, he continued quickly, I saw how brilliant it was, how thoroughly you'd protected yourself. When you called me after the firing, I'd already decided not to help them. I chose to help you instead. I set down my fork, processing this betrayal that had somehow turned into loyalty. You were spying on me? I finally managed. Initially, yes, he admitted, but I switched sides when I saw what was happening. I couldn't be part of them trying to steal your work. I stared at him, unsure whether to feel grateful or furious. I spent the next day wrestling with Nate's confession. Had he really changed sides, or was this another angle I couldn't see? I dug through our correspondence, looking for signs of deception. Nothing stood out. His guidance had been flawless, his strategy sound. If he'd wanted to sabotage me, he'd had countless opportunities. Finally, I called him. I'm still processing what you told me, I said bluntly. I understand, he replied. Trust is earned. I'm prepared to keep earning yours. I considered my options. The deal was signed. The victory secured. Did I really want to lose my most valuable ally over what might have been? I'll keep working with you, I decided. For now, but full transparency from here forward. Absolutely, he agreed, relief evident in his voice. And Nate? I added. We're not even close to done. Because while signing the Variantech deal under my own name was satisfying, I was beginning to see a bigger picture. This wasn't just about one contract or getting back at Bill. This was about establishing myself as a power player, someone who couldn't be discarded or diminished. The foundation was laid. Now it was time to build. Zenix's stock dropped 14% in a single day. I watched the ticker on my laptop, sipping coffee in my new office, a modest space I'd leased in a downtown high-rise. The market's reaction was swift and brutal. Investors hate surprises, and Xenix had just delivered a big one. Financial news sites ran analyses of what they called the Variantech fumble. Industry blogs picked apart how Xenix had lost control of their biggest opportunity in years. Comment sections filled with speculation about internal chaos. The company's PR team scrambled to control the narrative, releasing a statement claiming they were exploring multiple strategic partnerships, and that the Variantech situation was just one facet of a broader growth strategy. Nobody was buying it. Meanwhile, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters wanted interviews. Recruiters offered executive positions. Former colleagues sent congratulatory messages, many adding, "I always knew Bill was threatened by you." I declined most interview requests, letting the contract speak for itself. My only public statement was simple: I'm proud of the agreement with Variantech and look forward to ensuring its successful implementation. Behind the scenes, I was already planning my next moves, because when your opponent is drowning, that's exactly when you should build a bigger boat. "We want in," said the voice on the other end of the call. "Whatever you're building next, we want to be part of it." It was Jason Winters, VP of Innovation at TechCore, one of Xenix's biggest competitors. This was my third such call this week. "I'm listening," I replied carefully. "We've been watching the Variantech situation," he continued. "Impressive work. Our CEO would like to meet with you, discreetly, of course." The tech industry operates on whispers and reputation. In just 2 weeks, I had become someone worth whispering about. The woman who outmaneuvered a corporate giant. The strategist who protected herself with a single brilliant clause. I scheduled the meeting with TechCore, along with similar conversations with 2 other companies. Not to spite Xenix, but because these were opportunities I'd earned. Nate helped me prepare a standard NDA and consulting agreement. "You're in a unique position," he advised. "You understand Xenix's software ecosystem, but aren't bound by non-compete clauses since they fired you." I nodded, considering the possibilities. "I'm not looking to burn Xenix to the ground," I said, "but I won't turn down legitimate opportunities that come my way." "That's what makes you dangerous," Nate replied with a smile. "You're playing chess while they're still figuring out how they lost at checkers." I was reviewing TechCore's proposal when Dana called. Her voice tight with urgency. "Check your email," she said. "Now." I opened my inbox to find screenshots of internal Xenix emails. My blood ran cold as I read them. "Bill to HR Director. Need to ensure Avery James is blacklisted with all our partners. Create a confidential notice about her breach of ethics." HR Director to Bill. "Without evidence of misconduct, this creates legal exposure for us." Bill to HR. "Then find something. Check her expense reports, computer usage, anything. She can't just walk away with our deal." I sat back, jaw clenched tight. This wasn't just professional jealousy anymore. This was an active attempt to destroy my reputation and livelihood. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked Dana. "Because it's wrong," she replied simply. "And because 3 other people have already seen these emails. It's only a matter of time before they leak more widely." She was right. Bill wasn't just digging his own grave. He was using a backhoe. "He tried to kill my career?" I whispered, barely containing my anger. "Tried and failed," Dana replied. "And people are noticing." I thanked her and ended the call, my mind racing with this new information and how to use it. I decided to break my silence with one strategic interview, not with Tech Week or any industry publication, but with Business Ethics Review, a respected journal known for thoughtful analysis rather than sensationalism. For 2 hours, I sat with their senior editor in a quiet coffee shop, carefully sharing my story. I kept it factual and professional, avoiding personal attacks against Bill or Xenix. "I was terminated without warning while negotiating a major contract," I explained. "Fortunately, I had included standard contingency language that protected both the client and the primary negotiator in case of unexpected changes." When asked about the aftermath, I simply confirmed that Variantech had chosen to proceed with me rather than Xenix. "Why go public now?" the editor asked. "Because principles matter in business," I replied. "Contracts should be honored, relationships should be valued, and professionals should be judged by their contributions, not by office politics." The article appeared online that evening. By morning, comment sections exploded with support. Former Xenix employees shared their own stories of toxic leadership. Industry veterans praised my foresight and professionalism. What I didn't mention in the interview was the blacklisting attempt. That card remained in my hand, ready to be played if necessary. Meanwhile, at Xenix, the walls were closing in on Bill Carmichael. The Xenix board of directors convened on a rainy Thursday morning. Security was tight. No assistants, no phones, no interruptions. Bill arrived early, armed with a folder of documents he hoped would save his career. His strategy was desperate: paint me as a corporate saboteur who had deliberately manipulated the contract. The meeting began with grim faces around the polished table. The CEO's opening statement was brief. "We're here to determine accountability for the Variontech situation and decide appropriate next steps." Bill launched into his defense, his voice rising as he described my calculated betrayal. He accused me of deliberately hiding the stability clause, of intentionally positioning myself to steal the deal. When he finished, the room fell silent. Then the chief counsel spoke. "Mr. Carmichael, if Miss James was so deceptive, why did you fire the person managing our most important contract without reviewing its terms?" Bill stammered a response about restructuring decisions. "And why," continued another board member, "did you attempt to blacklist Miss James with our industry partners? We've seen the emails." Bill's face paled. He hadn't known those messages had leaked. One by one, the board members cast their votes. The outcome was unanimous. Effective immediately, the CEO announced, "Your employment with Xenix Systems is terminated." Bill cleared out his office under HR supervision. Security escorted him through the lobby, past curious onlookers pretending not to stare. As he stepped onto the sidewalk, he caught sight of a business magazine on a newsstand. There I was on the cover, arms crossed confidently with the headline, "The Dealmaker, How Avery James Rewrote the Rules." He stared at it, remembering how easily he'd dismissed me, how casually he'd taken credit for my work, how confidently he'd fired me without checking what it would mean. "She planned this," he muttered, drawing concerned glances from passers-by. But he was wrong. I hadn't planned for him to fire me. I'd simply prepared for the possibility, creating protection that activated only when needed. Meanwhile, at AJ Consulting, I welcomed 2 new employees. Former Xenix engineers who had reached out after the news broke. We set up in our modest office, focusing on the implementation phase of the Variontech deal. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus Chen. "CEO wants to discuss expanding our partnership. Dinner next week?" I smiled, typing back an acceptance. The best revenge wasn't about destroying Bill's career. It was about building my own, bigger and better than before. 3 months after the firing, Variontech's CEO personally delivered their offer. We sat in his corner office, looking out over San Francisco Bay as he slid the folder across his desk. "We'd like to acquire AJ Consulting," he said. "Full buyout, plus a 5-year position for you as Strategic Partnerships Director." The numbers made my breath catch. 8 figures up front, plus a substantial salary and performance bonuses. The kind of offer that changes lives. "You've proven yourself not just as a negotiator, but as someone who understands how to structure deals that work," he continued. "We need that expertise in-house." I opened the contract, scanning the terms. It was generous, fair, and thorough. Exactly what I would have expected from Variontech. But something didn't feel right. The Strategic Partnerships Director would report to their Chief Commercial Officer. After everything that had happened with Bill, the thought of working under someone else's authority made my stomach tighten. "I need time to review this," I said, closing the folder. That night, I went through the contract line by line, making notes in the margins. When I reached the reporting structure section, I drew a bold line through it and wrote my own version. The next morning, I returned to Variontech with my decision and my counteroffer. "I accept with one condition," I told Variontech's CEO, pointing to my revision. "I'll work with you, not for you. Strategic Partnerships becomes an independent division with direct board reporting." He raised an eyebrow. "That's a significant change to our structure." "So is acquiring a company just to secure one person's expertise," I countered. We both knew what I was really asking for. Autonomy. Freedom from the kind of politics that had ended my Xenix career. Protection from another Bill Carmichael scenario. The CEO studied me thoughtfully. "You're not used to compromising, are you, Avery?" I compromise on terms, not on principles, I replied. I joined Xenix as a team player and ended up being sacrificed to someone's ego. I won't put myself in that position again. He nodded slowly, then extended his hand. Deal, he said. But the board will expect results. The board will get results, I promised, shaking his hand firmly. Later that week, I signed the revised agreement, my new title emblazoned below my name, Executive Vice President Strategic Partnerships. Not just a fancy title, but a position with real power and independence. As I left the signing, I realized I'd gained something more valuable than money. I'd regained control over my professional destiny. 6 months after joining Variantech, I launched the Women in Tech Leadership Fund using part of my acquisition payment. Its mission, mentoring women in business and technology who faced circumstances similar to mine. The fund provided legal education, contract workshops, and career coaching. We taught women how to document their contributions, protect their work, and recognize warning signs of toxic leadership. At our first workshop, I shared my story with 50 attendees. I nearly walked away, I admitted. The night I was fired, I almost accepted defeat. Hands raised with questions. How did you find the courage? Weren't you afraid of backlash? How do you know when to fight and when to move on? I answered honestly, emphasizing that my story wasn't about revenge. It was about preparation meeting opportunity. About having the foresight to protect yourself in a world where loyalty isn't always reciprocated. As the event ended, a young woman approached me privately. I just got fired, she said, her voice shaking. My boss took credit for my project, then let me go when I confronted him. Can you help me? I looked at her, determined despite her pain, talented but underestimated, and saw myself from just months ago. Yes, I said, taking her contact information. That's exactly why we're here. 1 year to the day after my firing, I walked past Xenix Systems headquarters. The building looked the same, but the company had changed dramatically. Their stock had never fully recovered. They'd lost key talent to competitors. The CEO had been replaced following a vote of no confidence. I paused at a coffee cart across the street, ordering a latte. On the vendor's small TV, a business news ticker scrolled. Xenix Systems under SEC investigation for disclosure failures related to lost Variantech deal. I sipped my coffee, watching employees hurry into the building. Some faces I recognized, many I didn't. None of them noticed me. Just another successful-looking professional on a busy street. My phone buzzed with a calendar alert. Board meeting at Variantech in an hour. I needed to present our quarterly partnership results, which had exceeded projections by 28%. After that, I had interviews scheduled with 2 candidates for our expanding team. Then dinner with Nate to discuss a new venture we were exploring. I took a final look at the Xenix building, feeling neither bitterness nor satisfaction. Just a quiet acknowledgement of how much had changed. Restructuring, I whispered to myself, echoing Bill's words from that firing call. Guess we both had one. I turned and walked away, leaving the past behind with each step forward.